What defines success?
You take chances, you take risks, you work with people that you don't know maybe if it's going to work out or it's not. You take on projects that seem great in the beginning and then they turn out to not be that fruitful.
What happens when you get knocked down?
By the fall, like everything was falling apart. I lost my job the next year at TheStreet.com. What helped me was having that book.
What makes some people radiate?
You have to be patient because sometimes you won't see a return on your investment. But if you stick with it, if you love it, if you nurture it, ultimately it only makes your brand stronger and it only makes you more successful down the road.
This is Radiate.
Hi everyone, welcome to Radiate, the show where we interview some of the world's most successful people to find out how they work their way to the top. This week, my friend and personal finance expert, Farnoosh Torabi, is joining us. Farnoosh is a fellow podcaster with the show So Money. She's also the author of the best-selling book, When She Makes More. And she's now the host of a new primetime television show, Follow the Leader. It's all about entrepreneurs. Now, Farnoosh began her path to becoming a personal finance guru when she hit a speed bump in her career. She got laid off at TheStreet.com. Through lots of hard work and ingenuity, she's been able to create a well-known brand. So you're going to learn a lot from Farnoosh. Enjoy. Farnoosh, I'm
Betty!
Yay! I'm so glad to finally have you on this podcast. I remember that you were one of the first people I talked to when I was thinking about doing a podcast, because you were as well. Mm-hmm. And now your podcast is so popular. Tell me a little bit about, because I think one thing I've always admired about you is that you've been able to build your own brand and you've been able to build it so effectively. So how have you done that?
Oh, gosh. Well, I think what helped was that I've been doing this for such a long time, and I think today developing a brand in some respects is harder. There's just more competition out there. There's more noise. How do you get yourself to stand out? I think the way you do it these days is different than maybe how you would have done it if you'd started out when I was.
So how long ago did you start?
So that I would say, I think what really was the game changer for me was writing my first book. In 2008, it came out, You're So Money. I was still working, I was an employee at TheStreet.com, very much enjoying my job there. But I think one of the things that kind of was born out of necessity for me was trying to make more money as I was living in New York,
right,
and paying off my student loans. And so I was always interested in journalism and writing and everything that went along with that, telling a story and on different platforms. And so while I was at The Street, everything I was doing was more video-based. So I was like, let's write more on the side to make money, but also kind of expand my horizon.
Right.
That those writings turned into a book. And
so were you doing personal finance when you were at The Street?
A lot of it, but even also I was doing a lot of Wall Street coverage, economic coverage, interviewing CEOs, going to the opening bell, closing bell, reporting from the floor. So I got a lot of, and that's why I wanted to go to The Street, was to sort of learn how to take these macro issues that are happening at corporate level, market level, and distill it for the everyday person. So in a way, it was still personalizing it, but mm-hmm. I think I grew up a lot there and learned how to really cover the harder news stories. Right. But always loved personal finance. And my first book was about how to manage your money as a young adult, kind of a biographical, how I was doing it, attempting to do it. And the book really took on a life of its own. It was also great timing. It was 2008.
Depth of the recession.
Yeah, well, I didn't know that we were about to enter such a low period. The mm-hmm. book came out in the spring, and then by the fall, like everything was falling apart. I lost my job the next year at TheStreet.com. So
wow.
What helped me was having that book.
Thank goodness you had that.
Thank goodness. It was the parachute. And rather than worrying that I have to go right back into the corporate world, find that job that I just lost in some way, shape, or form again, replace that income, I said, you know what, let's just
all in.
Let's just go all in, which is something that I always wanted to do anyway, but I was too scared. Where am I going to get my health insurance? Who's going to pay for my cell phone bill? Because, I was able to get a phone through work. These silly things now when you look back on it, because the reward is so much greater than, the $300, $400, $500 a month that you have to find to pay for your own dental. So it was a blessing in disguise. It was the kick in the pants that I needed. And thank goodness I had that book, because it really, what it did for me was it allowed me to have an identity that was mine. No one can take that away from you. And I think, so for me, it was a book. For others today, maybe it's a podcast. Maybe it's whatever intellectual property that you can curate and create and control, that you can be proud of and have that be your business card and your everything. And so you can fall back on it, but you can also leverage it and build on that. So that was really what started it for me. And to this day, I have people who are like, I've been with you since that first book. It's really nice to see how everything's developed. And I've definitely made some mistakes along the way. I've definitely taken
Like what? Like what was your first mistake?
My first mistake was jumping into a second book that I just didn't know what I wanted to write about, but there was a lot of pressure for me to do it, because that's how sometimes the world works. People want to, they see a potential in you. They want you to continue creating things so that they can benefit. They want it to be a win-win. My second book, Psych Yourself Rich, I'm really proud of it. I think it helped my career a lot. It helped a lot of readers, but it was a painful process. And I wouldn't go back and do it the same way. I would have taken more time to write it, more research.
Did it come out the year after?
It came out 2 years later, which means I started working on it pretty much right after the first book. And I got the book deal before I even had an idea. They're like, we just want to work with you. We'll figure it out along the way, which, hey,
it
good problems to have.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
People, it's like, I don't want to be sounding ungrateful here, but it was,
you should have thought a little bit more about it.
At least, and I think I went into a deep, dark depression over it, because I had writer's block, and I had to have this deadline. I had to come out with the book. And I under all that pressure, I think, I lost the joy out of doing what I started doing as a passion, and now it felt like it was torture. Right. So anyway, that was a lesson learned. And then I think along the way too, maybe I sold myself too short, did things for free, hoping that they would parlay into bigger opportunities. And I think that's just a risk that I guess, if you can call me an entrepreneur, that entrepreneurs take. You take chances, you take risks, you work with people that you don't know maybe if it's going to work out or it's not. You take on projects that seem great in the beginning, and then they turn out to not be that fruitful. I've also learned that, as much as I would love to say that my books have sold millions of copies, it's really hard to get your book to the New York Times bestseller list. And but for me, I still do that sort of work.
Well.
They have, and I feel like my books are marketing vehicles. Their books are loss leaders. A lot of podcasts are loss leaders, but that's also not a bad thing. If you can turn that into something else, if you can leverage, and that's what I learned, is that you have to be patient, because sometimes you won't see a return on your investment, whether it's the time and the money you put into a book, a course, a podcast. But if you stick with it, if you love it, if you nurture it, if you listen to your audience and integrate their feedback into whatever, so it's a work in progress, that ultimately it only makes your brand stronger, and it only makes you more successful down the road, because it can lead to so many other things.
Now, you mentioned earlier, you said, if I could even call myself an entrepreneur. Why don't you call yourself an entrepreneur?
Well, I've been spending a lot of time with entrepreneurs lately on the CNBC show Follow the Leader. And these are like the rock star entrepreneurs of our time. The Warby Parker founders, Gary Vaynerchuk, who, if you ask him the definition of an entrepreneur, it's somebody who doesn't stop, who is go, 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 who hustles 24/7. And that's not me. I mean, I hustle, but I also like to come home to my family every night. I like to go on vacation. Some entrepreneurs might say that's lazy. I sort of feel like entrepreneurship is like feminism. Like, everyone has their own definition, and you can easily start to doubt yourself. Am I really a feminist? Am I really an entrepreneur?
Right. Well,
so that's, I guess I am an entrepreneur. But when I start to think about the others who are really like upholding the term to such a degree, to such an extent of wealth and richness and success, I'm like, I'm not changing the world. Maybe I am, but in a different way. And so I guess I should take more credit for that. Thank you.
I think so.
It's turning into a therapy session.
if I can put my own
worth it.
100%.
I do think the definition of entrepreneur is widening, and I don't subscribe to what Gary Vaynerchuk says, and that you have to be. I think you have to be hustling 100%, and it is 24/7. But I think you can be an entrepreneur and you can enjoy your family and you can have a vacation. So,
and he does all those things.
And he does all those things, right? So, because I don't want it to scare off people who think entrepreneurialism is only about that. I think a lot of people are successful and have, different definitions of entrepreneurialism. I think I'm probably talking selfishly about it too. So
sure. Definitely. And I think it is broadening, like you said. And I actually remember one definition that I think for me, that's probably, I would agree the most with, is that entrepreneurship. When you're an entrepreneur, you create something that is bigger than yourself.
Exactly.
Well, that's pretty broad. And I think that is true. Whether you're an Uber driver and you're helping people get from place to place, that's a mission, that is a purpose that is bigger than you trying to, pay your rent with that money. And that's something that you've, while it's an establishment and you're kind of, working for Uber, you're at least, you can call your own shots, and to a greater extent than if you're working, as a cog in the wheel at a 9-to-5.
Absolutely. So now looking at this years later, it's been almost 10 years, in fact. Did you think you'd be where you are now?
I think, no, I don't even know where I'm going to be next year. And that's the truth, it's the excitement and also the scary part of being who I am. And I think for a lot of people who consider themselves to be personal brands and thought leaders and independently employed and are entrepreneurs, solopreneurs. And so I just have to trust that if I keep putting out the good work and I keep connecting with my audience and I'm honest to them and truthful to myself, and that I allow myself to have me time and work time and being able to just have, I don't believe in balance, but just being able to have a life so that I can reflect and grow. And I think that it will work. It has worked out, and I have to believe that it will continue to work out in the future. It's all up to me. And so far, I think I've proven to myself that I'm somebody who will do whatever it takes.
So where do you think your self-motivation comes from? What is it in your background? Because where are your parents?
My parents are from Iran.
Okay.
And they moved here in, I think it was 1979. My father was coming here to get his PhD with the intention that he was going to get the degree and go back to Iran. And this was 78, 79. My parents had just gotten married, and the war broke out in Iran. So, and at the time he was in the States and seeing what was happening back home, and he thought, this is probably not a good time to go back home and start a family there. So he was fortunate in getting a work permit, a visa to stay here after he completed his studies, and that parlayed into ultimately getting a citizenship, and my mom also, and I was born here. And so very fortunate about that, because I would not have the same life, nothing close.
Right.
I think it comes from, I've seen my parents work to the bone. I know what hard work looks like, and I know the benefits and payments and rewards of hard work. And I'm the first child too, so maybe there's a birth order situation going on where I feel like I have, I'm more type A, I'm more independent. But
are you the oldest of two?
I'm the oldest of two, and it's a pretty wide gap. It's 10 years difference.
Wow.
So I don't know, Betty. I think it's just that I love to work. I love working. My husband thinks I have one addiction, and that is work. He's just figured it out too. He's like, in the beginning of our relationship, he'd say, "Wow, you have no vices. You don't bite your nails. You don't do anything. You don't have. I like to." Everything is in moderation with me.
You're like an easygoing chick.
Yeah, I'm a cheap date. I don't even get drunk. I cruise, And
you're low maintenance.
I'm low maintenance, and then but except when it comes to work. And so he said, your vice is working, and I think that's true. I like.
Is that a vice though? You see, I think it's interesting, right? Because and on the one hand, as an entrepreneur, you have to be 24/7. On the other hand, that means you do have to work, and you have to love working.
I do love working. So maybe vice isn't the right word. It's more that I I can't get enough of it, you know, because especially when you're working for yourself, because there really is no ceiling. There's no limit to how far you could go and grow. And I have, you know, people out there that I admire that I'm like, wow, one day, you know, maybe I can have those, you know, while, you know, people like Susie Orman, I'm like, wow, she's created, people are like, are you the next Susie Orman? I'm like, no. But I wouldn't mind her revenue stream. If I'm completely honest, I wouldn't mind her reach.
Right.
You know, I think that's to be admired. And so I guess I always liked working. I remember when I was 12, I was working as my parents were paying me to babysit. And then as soon as I could get my work permit, I got that at 15 and a half, started working at the diner. In college, I had a few jobs. Even when I was, you know, graduated from school, graduate degree, worked, but still had other jobs on the side. I babysat, I bird sat, I freelance, wrote articles for papers, all while having a 9-to-5. So I just like to, I think because through work, you really get to connect with people, you get to broaden your horizons, you're investing in yourself, you're learning, you're also, not to mention, making money, which is great.
But I also think there's something about you that, you know, is a difference between someone who's just really good at their job and really great at what they're doing, which is, it goes back to originally when we were talking about the podcast, is I remember we were discussing it. I remember this was like in the beginning of I forget, maybe it was last year. Mm-hmm. And then 6 weeks later, the podcast was out. So you execute very well. So you execute. And I think that that's really, really important when it comes to success, is execution.
It is. And well, thank you for saying that, because I definitely felt that launching a podcast was really overwhelming, but I made a goal. I'm really good at creating a goal. And I remember, I know what I have to do to complete a goal. I know myself, and maybe that's a trait. That's like something that, you know, is worth perfecting, is to kind of know yourself and how you like to work and what distracts you and how to really get focused. And I'm a very visual person. So when I was launching the podcast, I bought a course to sort of learn the step by step, but that still wasn't enough for me because it was all in my head, and I needed to visualize it in my own way. So like it literally had like a whiteboard with, you know, diagrams and my own checklists and things like that, and deadlines for myself. Like by Thursday, you need to have this, and by 2 weeks, you should have this. And I always had a launch date in mind, January 14th, 2015. Right. And so that for me was what kept me going. And I knew nothing about podcasts. I had to learn. And right now I'm in this process where I want to launch a course, and I'm more overwhelmed than I was when I was launching the podcast, because
a course on what?
A course on probably something, I think it's going to be something around earning and how to earn more. And because that's what my followers have told me they care more about, you know, is I have a very cool audience that's educated, makes decent amount of money. They're doing good things with their money, but they want to grow. Yes. They want to get out there and build wealth and just kind of like just kill it. And you kind of can't do it sometimes when you're just making a certain salary. You have to either, you know, change jobs, earn more at the job you're at, start making more money on the side. So the course is really going to envelop all of that and deliver it. But now the hard thing is like, okay, so now what? What's the system? What's the software? Who do I hire?
So you're doing it all over again.
So I'm doing it all over again. And it's actually more involved, I think, than a podcast. A podcast is great because I think as long as you have a Wi-Fi connection, a good mic, somehow a way to record it, and, you know, someone that you trust who can edit it. I mean, certainly you can invest more in a podcast, but for at the beginning, you know, if you just want to get out there, there's really not a lot of barrier to entry. But I'm finding that a course, especially for me too, I think my audience expects a certain level of quality,
and it takes a lot more to think about that and to put that together. So, and we're going to get a little bit meta here then. So, what was the thing that you learned about podcasting? Like, what did you learn when you started doing it that surprised you?
That it is a long haul. I think I was misled into believing that, with my brand and my visibility, I could just automatically put out a podcast with great guests like Tony Robbins, who's got 1 billion followers, and I would be able to monetize within 6 weeks, or I would just be like crushing it in the iTunes store. And I would put people to shame. And not that I was like hoping, those weren't my literal thoughts, but I definitely thought that things would start to pick up momentum a lot sooner. But it's one of those things where it takes time. And this was a year ago when there weren't as many podcasts. Now there are even more podcasts. And so it took time. And I think what I realized was that you just always you had to make your podcast number one. That was like always what I would talk about to people. It was always top of mind. You really had to nurture it. You didn't just have to, it wasn't like it could just take on a life of its own by itself. You needed that R&R, that person behind it who is promoting it. And not all types of promotion work. I think the best kinds of promotion were word of mouth sometimes, not like taking out Facebook ads or doing a press release. And of course, asking, which is hard sometimes of me too. I have a hard time like asking your guests to help you promote it. I kind of feel like I'm burdening them with that, but a lot of times they're just more than happy. So doing that, and I have transcripts for all my shows, which has benefited me in that sometimes if it's a slow news day, some of the business journalists that I know will go into those transcripts and try to find gems to turn into headlines that are like quick 400, 500 word blog posts that then will go viral, that then Yahoo will pick up. Like I literally woke up one morning and there were 25,000 downloads to my podcast and it was like 8 a.m. And I'm like, did the internet break? Like that's
like what happened?
Like someone like press the wrong button and like somehow I have 25,000 by accident.
And what was that?
It was Business Insider had picked up one of my interviews and turned it into like a really juicy headline that then like I think Yahoo picked up, and it just became this amazing, awesome thing that had led so many people to the podcast. And I feel like if I can get just one of those every couple of months, it will just build and build and build. And,
I think people do expect lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
And you just never know when it's going to happen. So the rest of the time it is just a grind to do it. It's a grind.
And honestly,
to do it.
Certainly. And the things that have been the most incredible have come through just me bragging about the podcast to someone, not in a real braggy way, but I remember I hit my first 100,000 downloads in, 2 months or whatever it was. And I was at the Today Show backstage and I was talking to some people about it. And this woman overheard and she came over and said, "Wait, what is this? You have a podcast? That's great. Tell me about it." And this woman ended up being the founder of Tradesy, which is an online fashion resale site. And one of her investors is Tim Ferriss. And she said to me, "Hey, you should have Tim Ferriss on your podcast. Sounds like it would be totally up your audience's alley." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's great. I really appreciate that you think I would be able to lure in a guest like that, of that caliber. I'll put him in the same bucket as like Oprah and the Dalai Lama." And she's like, no, seriously. I know Tim. He is invested in my company. Let me text him right now for you." And I'm like, is this really happening? And so he got back to her. He got in touch with me. A week later, he was on my podcast. And I mean, not only was that, I would never have thought that would have happened, because I know people who know Tim and they would never do that for me. This is a complete stranger who was like, "I love your energy about this podcast, and woman to woman, I want to support you." So she did that for me, and that was so
amazing.
Cool. Yeah. And then another 8 months later, I ran into a woman. We became friendly, and she called me up one day. She said, "Hey, I have a friend who called me asking if I know any female podcasters who have financial podcasts because they want to help them get ads." And I was like, "Really? Okay, yeah, put us in touch." That was AdLarge, and now they're my advertising partner, and they help to sell out the inventory every month. And
it's amazing.
I'm finally making money, and that's just because you just have to be the biggest cheerleader for your products.
And you have to be open, and you have to be, you have to keep your ears and your eyes open.
Yeah. I don't believe in, my husband and I used to think that like you just are lucky sometimes. But I'm like, you create your own luck. You totally create your own luck. Certainly, there's a right. Timing plays a big role. Coincidence plays a big role. But why else were you there? You know, it's like you can, when you have your eyes and ears open, you can identify opportunities when others are not paying attention and they miss out on them. And call that luck, call that what you want, but you have to give yourself some credit there.
Absolutely. Okay, so Farnoosh, tell me a little bit about the CNBC show Follow the Leader. What are you learning? Who's on it so far, and what are you learning from these leaders?
So very excited to be in this incredible series on CNBC called Follow the Leader. And what we hope to do is to give you a never before seen look at how entrepreneurs think and why they are successful. You know, typically when you interview someone, you get 30 minutes, maybe an hour if you're lucky. The PR person is standing in the corner, hanging on to every one of your words, making sure there are nothing that's said that's like problematic. So now we get to go 48 plus hours, sometimes longer, with these entrepreneurs to work, to home, from place to place, to really observe.
And what are you learning from these leaders?
I think the most successful CEOs and in this case, you know, the founding men and women of these companies, is that they're really good at knowing what problems they should care about and what ones they shouldn't care about. And I think when you're just starting out, you care about everything. You're overzealous. You are very emotional. Everything matters. You want to micromanage everything. And I think that it takes a lot to step outside of that and say, this is what I'm going to care about, and this is what I'm not going to care about. And these are the kind of meetings that I want to be involved in and ones that I don't want to. And surrounding yourself with a team that you can trust to take over everything else because you're only one person and you have only so much bandwidth, and you have what your strengths are. You're not perfect at everything. So I think being able to accept that and play to that is a characteristic that is unique to some of the most successful entrepreneurs.
And have you learned that yourself? You've taken that advice to heart too?
I think so. I'm still learning, I think. I have a great assistant right now. She's full-time with me. And, you know, I need to be patient because she has to learn the processes, and she has to also learn, you know, and she's a fast learner, but, you know, there's some growing pains. And so you have to be able to slow down in order to speed up. And that's what, you know, where we are right now. But it's going really well. But I also think that I've made some mistakes in hiring people in the past, as far as, you know, whether it was a short-term project or contractor, because I just took the word of other people that this person's great. And I didn't really do my due diligence and didn't really learn about them so much as like, how are you going to help me?
Right.
And I should have taken the time to really feel out, who is this person? What do they care about? How do they think about their work and the world sometimes too? You can learn a lot about somebody just based on how they live their own personal lives. And I find that my leaders that I followed know their employees and their staff, and at least the people that are very close to them, not just for what they can do to them and how they've been performing at work, but they actually know what kind of personality these people are. They know what makes them tick. They know everything about their family life. And so I think for them, it's just they want to know as much to inform them before they hire people.
And that's something that you
I have learned that.
You have learned that.
I've also learned that they're just like us, Betty. You know, the goal of the show was to discover what makes them superhuman, you know, because not everybody can start a company like Birchbox or Warby Parker, and not everyone becomes a billionaire or has a company that's valued at $1 billion. These people did. So what differentiates them? Why haven't others achieved the same level of success? And there's certainly lessons to be told there. But I remember coming home many times and saying, you know, I feel like, for example, Neil and Dave from Warby Parker, the co-founders, you kind of want to just hang out with them. Like, they're normal guys. They're low key. They're they're soft spoken. They're not these, you know, eccentric. You know, we sort of think about who are behind these companies. Like, they're these like crazy visionaries, and they're eccentric, and they're out of this world. And no, they're very down to earth. It's like you went to college with some buddies and some of them became billionaires. It's like, man, I should have been working hard on some ideas. I should have been sitting in the computer lab with some idea making. And that's the difference, is that they wanted more out of life, and they were curious, and that, and they ran with their curiosity, and then they saw the potential, and they got excited, and they found the right people to hook up with. And they didn't have it all figured out when they first started.
No, nobody
did. But they didn't get too scared about,
about taking the
about
risk.
failure.
I think, I think about the failure part of it. I was talking to an entrepreneur last night who said, I'm not afraid of making all of my mistakes, because I will just make mistakes. I think when you get hung up on the fact that you've made a mistake, that's the mistake.
Right. Absolutely. Failure is part and parcel, and it's going to happen. So just anticipate it. But you're absolutely right that the failure is in the dwelling of it, and in the, when you fail, feeling as though you can no longer go forward. And no, it's a learning process.
So do you find, because I know, a good part of your audience and the books that you've written are, the ideal consumer is a woman, right? And you speak a lot to women, audiences. So tell me if there's differences you notice between women entrepreneurs and male entrepreneurs, and just also, just yourself in terms of, you being, an entrepreneur yourself, like how you think you might differ from others.
I think that if I was a man, sometimes I wish I was a man, only because, and this is maybe, I don't really wish I was a man, but my place, no, I love being a woman. But I think that when I see other male entrepreneurs, they can work until 10 o'clock at night and go home, and no one, and they wouldn't feel bad about it. At least that's my guess. But I rush out of here at 4 o'clock because I want to go home, and I feel like I would disappoint my family if I wasn't there. And that's okay. Like, I've made peace with that. I become really efficient between my hours at work and when I go home. But I feel as though, as a woman, I want to be at the forefront of my career, but also as a mom and as a wife. And there are only so many hours in the day. And so I feel like there's sometimes a push-pull that I think is more prevalent with women who are entrepreneurs and family oriented than men, because traditionally men have gotten a pass at, men, you got to go work, do the work thing. If you can come home, that'd be great. But if you got to work, you got to work. We understand that. But sometimes I feel like women, we don't get the same pass in life. And so it's why it's really important.
But do you think that holds you back?
No, because I don't consider because I consider myself winning right now. I'm able to I've designed the life that I really want. Would I be happy not having a husband and a family so I could be working 10 times more, which would be the case? No, I would be so miserable, because that doesn't fulfill me. Because I know myself to this, I know that much about myself. Is that as much as I would love to one day achieve more, and I do, not at the price of not having a stable home life and people that love me and that I can love back. So, and that's just me. I have female friends who aren't married, who don't, or are married, don't have children, who don't have the same responsibilities at home that I do, that can then go and spend 3, 4, 10 more hours at work in a day and maybe make more money than I do. But it's all relative, but I will say the point of this is just to say that it's really important that if you are a man or a woman and your ambition in life is to create an amazing career and work at that and give a lot of yourself to that, then you need to find a partner that supports that, understands that, and helps to make sure that you can do that. But again, that you have an agreement as well that you will see each other,
right? That they're supportive, but at the same time you still care. You still keep each other as a priority.
Yeah, there's an understanding there. There has to be an understanding.
So what? I mean, I always hear VCs say this, to their investors, or I'm sorry, to their entrepreneurs, which is what's your exit plan? What's your end? What is it that what will you sell out at and say, I'm done? Because there is an exit plan. There's an exit. There's an end. And I don't care what entrepreneur says, I'm here for the long term. There's an end that they're an exit that they're looking at. So I always wonder about that for people. Like, is there an exit plan? Like, is there a number at which point you say, I'm done. This is good. I'm happy.
Wow. A number. If someone just said to me here, well, what would I be giving up in exchange? That's what I want to
know. Your entire life and IP and everything.
Yeah, like my intellectual property, my heart and my soul.
Because some people say, if I made 20 million, I'd be done. I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, look, I have the great fortune of loving what I do. I don't know if I would. I would take the money and be like, but could I still work for you? Could I still come in every day and check emails and go to meetings because I need to get out of the house because I would go crazy. So yeah, $20 million would be awesome. And I think that I would definitely not be worried about having a course to launch in the fall, but at the same time, I think that I want to live up to what people have come to love and respect and expect from me, which is that I'm there for them. I give advice. I want to create transparency around money and make people feel empowered about their financial futures and, think about not just outside the box, but how to flip the box upside down. And when it comes to their financial well-being and potential, I want to be there for people. So whether that means I take that money and go on the road and do it in a different way, travel and meet people one-on-one and less is more. Maybe that's what I would do, but I haven't thought ever about selling. I don't even know what I would sell,
Right.
but
it's more like when you say, I'm done.
I'm done. Yeah. Yeah, 20 million would be good. That would be nice. I feel like
I imagine that would be good for a lot of people.
That would be good. Yeah, I could invest that and I could live off the dividends.
Right.
It'd be nice.
And I guess a final thing, what kind of advice do you give? Like, what's the most common question you get from people, whether they're men or women? And what is that question and what advice do you give, particularly when it comes to money issues?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you because I've gotten over 500 questions from people up since last year, and people I've surveyed my audience, and I think the number one pain point is, how do I make more money? People want to make more money. Salaries have been stagnant,
but everyone wants to make more money.
Everyone
right?
wants to make more money, and I think it's tempting now because you see all these people, you hear these stories, it seems like overnight success. It's not, but it's these online entrepreneurs and people who have these side gigs. And
but are they asking you, are they saying, how did you make more money?
No, they want to know, how can I make more money? How can I either ask for that raise that I've always wanted?
Got it.
How do I create that side revenue stream that's going to help to pay off my bills and maybe send my kids to school or just give me some more breathing room? They want to, and they really feel like earning more. And I think I agree with this too, is that earning more is a faster way to building wealth than just saving more.
Right.
You should save, but there's a limit to that. There's no limit to how much you can earn. So teaching people how to leverage their skills and think big and use the free resources that you have at your fingertips, the internet, your assets to really increase your earnings potential, and also how to negotiate, knowing your self-worth, speaking up for yourself, those kinds of skills.
But Farnoosh, is that the right question to ask? I mean, I'm saying, is that the right way for people to approach it? Is, how do I earn more? Or should the question really be that they should be asking themselves, how do I make myself more valuable?
Yeah, I think that's what ultimately we teach.
That's what it is,
That
right?
is what it is.
Yes.
How do I make more valuable? But
if you want to make more money, then go get freelance gigs, go do this, go do that. And you can, you'll see your paycheck increase, but that's not what we're talking about here, right? We're talking about, how do I make myself more valuable?
So that I can make more.
Let's
not forget, want to make the money.
Right.
Yeah. But how do I, whether it's, making myself more valuable at work, making myself more valuable in the marketplace, and so that I can attract the money that I deserve. But also, I don't believe in just law of attraction. You have to actually go out there and do the work. So that's a big part of my message is how to, yes, make yourself more attractive and to really believe in what you're really worth, but actually how to do the work so that you get the money that you are deserved.
Next week on Radiate, another fascinating entrepreneur. He's the creator of what I like to call the Victoria's Secret for men. Have you heard about these? He's the man behind Tommy John. He talks about going from medical device salesman to CEO of a 50-person company. How Tom Patterson convinced retailers like Neiman Marcus to sell his undershirts without an ounce of experience in the clothing industry. You are not going to want to miss this podcast. Thanks for joining us. I'm Betty Lou. If you liked what you heard, please send in your comments at radiateinc.com/feedback. Also, review us on iTunes, subscribe to us, and find me on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. See you next week on Radiate.